This is the Sabbath School lesson for the first quarter, 2022.
Welcome to Lesson 1 in the series In These Last Days, the Message of Hebrews. This lesson is titled The Letter to the Hebrews and to Us. It's ready for teaching on January 1, 2022, Tuesday, December 28, Malaise. The readers of Hebrews were successful in keeping their faith and commitment to Christ despite rejection and persecution. The conflict, however, took a toll in the long run. They fought a good fight and came out victorious, but also weary. Read Hebrews 2:18, 3:12-13, 4 verse 15, 10 verse 25, 12 verses 3, 12 and 13, and chapter 13 verses 1 to 9 and 13. What were some of the challenges the believers were facing? First of all, Hebrews 2:18, for in that he himself has suffered, being tempted, he is able to aid those who are tempted. And Hebrews chapter 3, verses 12 and 13, brethren, beware, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God, but exhort one another daily, while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. And chapter 4, verse 15, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. And Hebrews 10, verse 25, not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. And chapter 12, verse 3, for consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. And verses 12 and 13 of chapter 12. Therefore strengthen the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be dislocated, but rather be healed. And chapter 13, verses 1 to 9. Let brotherly love continue. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by doing so some have unwittingly entertained angels. Remember the prisoners as if chained with them, those who are mistreated, since you yourselves are in the body also. Marriage is honourable among all, and the bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. Let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have, for he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you, so we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Remember those who rule over you, who have spoken the word of God to you, whose faith follow, considering the outcome of their conduct. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Do not be carried away with various and strange doctrines, for it is good that the heart be established by grace, not with foods which have not profited those who have been occupied with them. And verse 13 of chapter 13, therefore let us go forth to him outside the camp, bearing his reproach. Hebrews tells us that the readers continued to experience difficulties. Verbal and probably other kinds of attacks against their honour continued, as we've just read in chapter 13, verse 13. Some believers were still in prison, Hebrews 13, verse 3, something that may have drained the church financially and psychologically. They were tired, chapter 12, verses 12 and 13, and could easily lose heart, chapter 12, verse 3. It is usual among persons and communities that after the thrill of victory passes, psychological and other kinds of defences are relaxed, and people become more vulnerable to the counter-attack of their enemies. The strength that a person or community mobilised to face an impending threat is more difficult to summon a second time. Read 1 Kings 19, verses 1 to 4. what happened to Elijah. So 1 Kings 19, beginning at verse 1. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, also how he had executed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And when he saw that, he arose and ran for his life, and went to Beersheba, which belonged to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he prayed that he might die, and said, It is enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. Ellen White writes in Prophets and Kings, page 161 and 162, but a reaction such as frequently follows high faith and glorious success was pressing upon Elijah. He feared that the reformation begun on Carmel might not be lasting, and depression seized him. He had been exalted to Pisgah's top, now he was in the valley. While under the inspiration of the Almighty, he had stood the severest trial of faith. But in this time of discouragement, with Jezebel's threat sounding in his ears, and Satan still apparently prevailing through the plotting of this wicked woman, he lost his hold on God. He had been exalted above measure, and the reaction was tremendous. Forgetting God, Elijah fled on and on until he found himself in a dreary waste alone. End of quote. And so to finish today, think about those times in which you failed in your Christian life and try to understand the circumstances and factors that contributed to the collapse. What could you have done differently? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.